In this video, I'm going to use the 2019 Microsoft Office Excel to teach you how to plot a physics II graph. I have a set of data based on a pendulum experiment. I have the length of the pendulum, the number of oscillations, the first time trial for each of this length based on the number of oscillation, the second time trial, the average time. I've also computed the period for each of this length, the uncertainty of the period, the square of the period, as well as the uncertainty for the square of the period. I just use two columns, namely the length column, which is for my x values, and the t-square column, which is for my y values. Now my delta t-square values will also be used when I compute my error bars later. So let's begin. I highlight the two columns I need by clicking on Command and highlighting. I go to Insert Graph. I have a list of different graph types. I choose Scatter. Now scatter graph allows me to force the line into a relationship that I hypothesize, whether is it linear or quadratic or exponential. Let's enlarge the graph. So I have a chart title here which I don't need. I click on it and I delete it. Before we proceed, let's check that the data points are correctly represented. I go to the first data point and I see that it's 0.15 and 0.61. So this is correct, 0.15, 0.61. Now in the event that it's not correct, I can rectify it by right-clicking on the dot, choose Select Data. I come to this dialog box. I can choose the X value that I want to take the values from. I click on this little icon and I highlight the entire column. In this case, it's my L column. I enter, I go to Y values, I do the same thing and I choose the entire column for my t-square. I highlight it and I click OK. And here we have it, the data points correctly represented in a graph. Now on a personal note, I prefer crosses rather than dots to represent my data points, so I can amend that by right clicking on the dot. I go to Format Data Series and I go to this little icon called Fill and Line. Click on it, I go to Marker option, built-in. Now I have a list of different types of markers. I choose cross, and for a better visual impact I choose size 8 rather than size 5, so I have the crosses big and visible. Now for scatter graphs, it doesn't come with a trend line, so I have to manually insert the trend line. I right click on the cross, I add trend line. I have a list of different trend lines, whether exponential, linear, logarithmic, polynomial, power, and so on and so forth. Based on my hypothesis, I hypothesize that it's linear, so I click on linear. Now I notice that this trend line is dotted. I want it to be bold, so I go to this icon, fill and line, I go to dash type, I select bold line. Now before I close this dialog box, I go back to trend line options. There are two other things that I need to discuss. First is the forecast. Now forecast is a function that extrapolate the line. I can extrapolate by extending the line forward or backward. Now I extend the line forward by 0.1 in the period, which is the x direction, and 0.1 and the backward direction, and I click OK. So my line gets longer, but my data points remain. Now this facilitates any reading of intersection points in my graph later. The next thing I need to talk about is this display equation and display R-square values, which are required in your II report. So I check these two boxes and I close the dialog box. So I have a text box here that shows the equation of my best fit line. Now notice that this equation is in y and x, but my variables are t-square and L. So I need to amend that by going to the text box and changing it to t-square and L. Notice that my t is italicized and my 2 needs to be in the index form. I highlight the 2, I right click on it and I go to font and I go to superscript. Click OK, and then I do the same thing for my x. I need to change it to italicized capital L. I add a little header to this text box. And the R-square value is equal to 1. Now the maximum value is 1. it shows that all the points are sitting on the line with a perfect fit. Any value smaller than 1 is not a perfect fit. So in a typical graph, we would expect R-square values to be 0.9 and above to be considered a okay fit. Now next, if you notice that there is this little icon here, add chart elements. Now this is a very useful icon. Now if I click here, the icon disappears. So how to get the icon back? I just click on the graph and the icon comes back. Now in the past earlier version, these elements are not found in this icon. It's all spread and you need to individually click them, but now it's all here. So one click, a drop down box shows all the different elements that I can add or amend. So the first thing I'm going to do is to add the grid lines for both my horizontal minor grid lines and vertical minor grid lines. So this facilitates reading of the graph with a better precision. The next thing I'm going to add is the axis title. I first add the horizontal axis title. In this case, it's my L value. And then I'm going to insert the vertical axis title. In this case, it's my t-square value. Now again, I need to make this to index form. I highlight, right click, and then I choose font and I superscript it. Do the same thing for the t-square value here. Font, superscript, and OK. Now the next thing I need to do is to insert the error bars. I go back to this icon, I see an error bar, I choose standard error. So I have the horizontal and the vertical error bars. Now for the purpose of my II, I do not need my horizontal error bars. I can delete them. And then for the vertical error bars, I double click and I get this dialog box. Now the direction of the error bars, I choose both. Now if I choose minus, it's just the bottom error bars. I choose plus, it's the top error bars, but I choose both. And now our error bars are not fixed numbers, fixed values. I customize it. I click on custom and I specify the value. Where do I get these error bars from? As I mentioned earlier, it's from this column of delta t squared, the positive error bars as well as the negative. So I click on this icon, I choose the entire column. This will be how much the error bar goes upwards, and I repeat the same thing for the negative error bar. I choose the same column, and that's how much the error bars will go downwards. I click OK, and I have the error bars here. Now you notice the error bars increases as the L value increases, which is what we have here. Okay, the next thing, we need to insert the extreme lines. I have two extreme lines, the steepest and the least steep extreme lines. I manually insert these two lines by plotting two more lines. So I need some data points. So randomly I'll choose two data points to insert my first extreme line. Now over here I choose 0.3, 3.6, and I will explain how I get these numbers. So I do the same thing for here, 0, 0.9 and 3.5. Okay, let's insert these extreme lines. I right click on any part of the graph, I choose select data. I see a plus sign here. Now if I amend any of these values, I will amend the best fit line that I already plotted, which is not what I want. I add a second line, and the x values are from here. The y values are from here. click OK. Now I see two dots. This is a scatter plot. I need to insert the trend line. I right click on the dot and need to choose the correct click. And add the trend line. Again, it's linear and it needs to be a solid line. Choose solid line and I choose a different color to differentiate my line. So I click OK. Now this line seems to overlap and I want it to be the steepest line, and that is where I need to explain how I get these values. Now this set of values is my X value. This set is for my Y values. This is my first data point, my second data point. I choose 0, 0 as my first data point and another point here, which is my second data point, to plot a straight line. Now this 3.6, I can amend it and adjust it such that I ensure my value, my extreme line lies within the error bars. If I click 3.7, it goes further up. If I choose 3.8, it swings further outside the error bars, which is not what I want. So I'll choose 3.7. Seems to be the steepest possible extreme line I can get. I can also adjust the other point. If I click point 1, my extreme line goes out of the error bars as well. If I click negative 0.1, it goes below. So I can manually adjust until I get a line that lies within all the error bars with the maximum gradient. That I call it my steepest extreme line. I insert a second line for my least steep extreme line. I right click on the graph, select data, and I add a third line. My X values, again from here, my Y value from here, and I click OK, and again I need to insert the trend line. And again it's linear. I choose a solid line and I add a different color. Now I need to ensure that this extreme line lies within the error bars. So in this case it doesn't. I choose 3.55, we push it in. So I'll get an extreme line that lies within the error bars. Now for these two extreme lines, I also need to insert, I format the trend line, I insert the equation. I display the equation for both extreme lines. I do not need to display the R-square value because it will surely return a value of 1 based on the 2 points I inserted. So this equation is for my least steep extreme line, and this one is for my steepest. So I need to amend it again by using t square and L instead of y and x. And I add a header to avoid confusion. This is for my steepest extreme line, and then this is for my least steep extreme line. And then I also add a header. Here we have it, the lines plotted with the requirement of II report. So I can right click and copy this graph and insert it into my Word document for my II report. With that, I finish my presentation.